Hello and welcome to Coppola Connections, the podcast where I'm shaking every branch of the Coppola family tree to find out, are they the greatest film family of all time? The way I intend to do that is by watching their entire collective filmography, one film at a time. And this week's film is 2015's Jurassic World, which has Jonathan Schwartzman as the director of photography. And my guest for this episode is Em from the fantastic Verbal Diorama podcast. Before we get into this week's episode, if you haven't seen this film, please do check out a handy document in the show notes that will tell you if and where this film is streaming. As well as that, if you want some extra chat with myself and Em, there's a good, close to 15 minutes chat all about Nicolas Cage that you can access on patreon.com/cagedinpod, where you can just chuck as little as $3 a month and just get a load of bonus chats with people I've had all about Nick Cage and some bonus Nick Cage chat on the Nick Cage specific episodes. So all that's left to do is to train your raptors, splice together as many terrifying dinosaurs as you can get your hands on, and hope for the best. And run around in the most inappropriate shoes you can find imaginable as we make some Coppola connections. The year is 2015, 14 years after this franchise's last outing that gave us 3 reasons why resurrecting dinosaurs was a bad idea. Jurassic World. Jonathan Schwartzman worked as the DOP on this film, making our Coppola connection for this episode. To help me tame some raptors, ride around on a gyrosphere, and spend the duration of this adventure in inappropriate shoes is podcaster, writer, and champion of UK film podcasts, Em from Verbal Diorama podcast. How are you today?
Hi Petros. I'm really well. I wanted to introduce myself with some sort of quote from Jurassic World, and then I realised that all the good quotes are in Jurassic Park. So
yeah. This so it's I rewatched it again today, and then I was kind of thinking most of the great moments in this film are unfortunately moments that were done better in Jurassic Park, but we will get into that in due course. So before we get into talking about Jurassic World, I always like to start these off by finding out what you know and your relationship to the Coppola family. So when did you first become aware of them as this entity, this kind of spider's web of a film family?
Well, I mean, I probably first got introduced to the Coppola name with Bram Stoker's Dracula, because I was legitimately obsessed with that movie. Not for the obvious Keanu Reeves reason, although, I mean, I do like to get Keanu Reeves in whenever I can. But when I was a teenager, I was so obsessed with that movie, and obviously that was my first instance of this guy called Francis Ford Coppola, and really it wasn't till because obviously I was a teenager at that point and I didn't really understand much. I was a bit dumb, so I didn't really know that there was a link between Nicolas Cage and Francis Ford Coppola, because you wouldn't, they're different surnames. So it wasn't really until I got introduced to Sofia Coppola that I kind of became aware that this was a family of people. And then obviously over the years you kind of realise that there's quite a few of them.
Yeah, there's tons of them, and the fact is that they all either, like Nicolas Cage, have that pseudonym surname, or they have different surnames entirely. So Talia Shire, Francis Ford Coppola's sister, her children are Schwartzman. So then it makes it even more confusing. You've got this kind of barrage of different surnames going on, but then you kind of zoom out and look at the family tree and go, Jesus Christ, how are all these people related?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it probably is the largest family in Hollywood. I think.
Yeah, I think it is. I've done the research, and there's like even members of the family that I would say 90% of people do not know the existence of, but they're there. They have like they've dipped a toe into the filmmaking world, whether in front of or behind the camera at some point in their life. So, one of the other questions I like to ask, and I know it's probably difficult with this specific family member because he is a DOP, but are you aware of like what would have been the first film you would have seen that had any involvement from Jonathan Schwartzman?
Well, I had to check his IMDb listing. But then I realised he's been involved in quite a lot of stuff that I've seen. Like Seabiscuit and The Amazing Spider-Man. So, but kind of going back to his earlier stuff, the first one, I think, and it actually is quite a nice link to Mr. Nicolas Cage, because it probably would be The Rock, I would think.
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
Because, I mean, and to be honest, I didn't even know genuinely that Jonathan Schwartzman was involved in The Rock until today. So yeah, I mean, and that's obviously, I mean, I don't know if he got that job from, you know, the fact that he's somewhat related to Nicolas Cage. I mean, he's not really related, is he? Isn't he like a stepson or something?
So yeah, he is Talia Shire's stepson, but I'm including him because I guess he would have probably grown up in the same house with his brothers and he's getting in. There's more tenuous links.
Okay,
than Schwartzman, I'll tell you that for sure. But that's crazy that link with The Rock, because it's The Rock and Armageddon that are both Jonathan Schwartzman as cinematographer, and they're the only two. It's crazy that he even has any, but they're the only two Michael Bay films that are in the Criterion collection.
No.
I always attribute it to the fact that it has involvement from the Coppola family that nudged him over the line to get into the Criterion.
I mean, that is quite astonishing, because when you think of the Criterion collection, you really do think of very highbrow material. You don't tend to think of Michael Bay, but good for him.
So let's talk about Jurassic World.
I'm really proud of you for going on this trip.
You're gonna have so much fun. And remember, if something chases you, run.
We have learned more in the past decade from genetics than a century of digging up bones. A whole new frontier has opened up. We have our first genetically modified hybrid.
You just went and made a new dinosaur?
Probably not a good idea. Almost 40 feet high. Really think she climbed out?
Depends.
On what?
What kind of dinosaur they cooked up in that lab? Evacuate the island. She's a highly intelligent animal. She will kill anything that moves.
Oh, God.
Your relationship with this film, when did you first see it? Like, what were your first impressions when you first saw it as well?
Well, I mean, I did go to the cinema to see this. I remember I was really excited about seeing Jurassic World. I am a huge Jurassic Park fan. I don't think there is anyone out there who isn't a huge Jurassic Park fan. I've always been a little bit more middling on the sequels. I mean, I think they're fine, but nothing has kind of reached the status of Jurassic Park. And you kind of look at Jurassic Park and you say, well, clearly, it is a warning there about messing with science and messing with evolution, and basically don't do it. And then, obviously, Jurassic World was announced, and it was quite clear from the trailers that, they did make a park, and, people are visiting this park, and, nothing could go wrong. And so it was always something I was quite interested in. I was quite interested to revisit this world at a different, at a point in the future. I mean, clearly, everyone knew what was going to happen. It wasn't going to be a 2-hour science documentary about how they made the dinosaurs. It was going to be dinosaurs get out and kill people. So everyone kind of knew what they were getting into with Jurassic World, and I've always been a bit of a Jurassic World apologist. In a sense that it was a huge, ginormous hit. I mean, this was like $1 billion movie. This was absolutely huge. And no, it's not as good as Jurassic Park, but I do think it has some really interesting themes on, well, just generally the stupidity of humanity. And obviously, corporate greed and indulgence. But ultimately, I kind of really like that life does still find a way. And also the fact that Ian Malcolm in Jurassic Park, I mean, he quite famously said, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. And that is exactly what happens in this movie, except it happens to a indescribable level, because not only do they start bringing back dinosaurs, they create a brand new species of dinosaur to try and make this park more attractive to people. And it's literally the stupidest idea. But then you look at what humans do in real life, and then you go, well, actually, there's every possibility that there are people this stupid out there. So I'm putting it out there. Jurassic World will probably happen at some point in the future, for real, because I think humanity genuinely is this stupid. I love human beings. I really do. Human beings are great, but let's be honest, there are a lot of stupid people out there who would do something like this. So
this film definitely has like a nihilistic undertow to it that like does make me think it might just be because I feel a bit under the weather today, where I was like, we fucking deserve all this bad shit. Do you know what I mean? Because like the way they're like messing about with nature and stuff like that, and it's like we'll get into it a bit more a bit later on in the podcast. But when the kids like go down that off the beaten track, as it were, I'm like, well, my sympathies are lost right now. I'm like, that is not a welcome to come in and have fun. That is like a gnarled up gate that like just screams danger ahead, but they go, hey, let's have some fun. And I think the moment a character does something like that, I'm like, no, I wash my hands of you. I know you are teenage boys, but it doesn't matter. So yeah, as I mentioned before, this film was released in 2015. It was directed by Colin Trevorrow, and as you mentioned, it was an absolute smash because it was $150 million budget with a return of 1.6 billion. It stars the internet's least favourite Chris Pratt, Bryce Dallas Howard, Ty Simpkins, Nick Robinson. We see the only returning character, I believe, from the original film is B.D. Wong's character, Dr. Wu, who I think the moment you see him on screen, right, you're like, well, you know some bad shit's going down. Him and Vincent D'Onofrio, you're like, oh, I know some bad shit is about to happen. So you touched on it slightly. I would like to know, like, what is your relationship in a bit more depth with the original Jurassic Park? Like, is it one that you watch a lot or that you revisit often?
My relationship with the original Jurassic Park is one of my kind of defining moments of cinema, basically. Yeah. It's one of the first times that I was taken to the cinema with my grandparents. So it's like a really fond memory for me going to the cinema with my grandparents. They obviously didn't know, I don't think, what Jurassic Park was about. Because obviously we were quite young and it was quite scary at the time.
Yeah.
But it's a movie that's kind of only ever grown in my estimations. I've covered it on my podcast. I've basically spoken at length so many times about how much I love Jurassic Park and how special and wonderful Jurassic Park is. And even today, it's one of those endearing kind of cinematic legends that isn't kind of bogged down by bad special effects. Like a lot of 90s movies are really bogged down by bad special effects. But Jurassic Park, just because of the amazing Stan Winston creature design, because of the very limited CG that it uses, and also because of the really interesting human characters as well.
Yeah.
It just kind of holds this really fantastical, wondrous kind of place in my heart. And even though I love Jurassic Park so much, I was always so willing to give Jurassic World a fair shot, because it was obviously this kind of brand new foray. It wasn't a Jurassic Park sequel per se. It was kind of a sort of a rebooty, kind of almost sequel, kind of spin-off, kind of, all of these kind of different things. It wasn't so much a direct sequel. But yeah, the original Jurassic Park is literally, I think, one of the greatest movies ever made. It's still one of my favourites of all time. I watch it quite regularly. I mean, there's not much that is better than Jurassic Park, really, in my estimations.
It's one of those things that Steven Spielberg really reinvented. Well, it almost invented the summer blockbuster, then reinvented it again in the 90s with Jurassic Park. And it's very much like a touchstone film for you think of it as almost like a line in the sand of what the summer blockbuster could be before it and what it could be afterwards. Do you know what I mean? Because the level of spectacle that we get in Jurassic Park is just phenomenal. And it is, as you say, even down to the casting decisions in that original film. You think of Sam Neill, I don't know, in the 80s, he would have been doing some real out there stuff, whether it's Zulowski's Possession, and then you've got Laura Dern working a lot with David Lynch. Only been a couple of years prior, she would have been in Wild at Heart with Nicolas Cage. Got to get that one in there. And then Jeff Goldblum, it would have been a few years after he was peeling off his own fingernails in The Fly. So just to even cast those kind of wicked character actors, to play these really interesting people. And I guess that film, I've heard it talked about before, that it's the kind of basic message for it, because a lot of Spielberg's stuff deals with parental relationships and stuff like that. And I guess the kind of one of the big through lines in that film is all about Sam Neill's character like learning to like accept children and almost like,
yeah.
do you know what I mean? Like it like almost like a parent getting used to the fact of becoming a parent. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's that thing of yeah, Spielberg is great at like taking, I guess, a lot of his personal issues and putting them into these amazing cinematic summer blockbusters, which kind of leads me into talking about Jurassic World. Like, how do you think this fits into that Spielberg mold and the kind of Amblin? Like, does it feel to you like an archetypal Amblin film?
It's an interesting question because it does and it doesn't. I think it does, but only because it kind of rehashes some beats from Jurassic Park. So you have like the Chris Pratt character, like this kind of aloof guy who's obviously single, and Bryce Dallas Howard's a little bit of this kind of uptight single girl, and they kind of become these surrogate parents for these two young boys who obviously happen to be her nephews. And I think that there are obviously themes of family, because you do have the parents of the two boys who are clearly going through a divorce, and they obviously wanted to have just one family breakfast before they ship their boys off to Death Island or whatever. I mean, who does that? Seriously, look, I don't have children, but if I had two young boys and my sister worked at Jurassic World, where, several years earlier, before it was Jurassic World, quite famously all these dinosaurs escaped, I might question whether it would be good parental decision to send my teenage boys to this theme park. I mean, I don't know. No judgment from me if anyone's ever in that situation. But essentially, yeah, the parents send them to Death Island, and yeah, and obviously these kids know that there's something not quite right, especially the youngest.
Yes.
And I kind of feel like Jurassic World wants to be it wants to be the new Jurassic Park, essentially. That's kind of what it's aiming to be. And to do that, it does kind of rely so much on that nostalgia of Jurassic Park. There's so many callbacks to Jurassic Park, so many things that happen in Jurassic World that are mirrored from Jurassic Park. So in that respect, yes, it does feel very Spielberg. It does feel quite Amblin. But then in other ways, it really doesn't. And I think it's because Jurassic World is so... It wants to be Jurassic Park, but obviously it's not. So it's simultaneously trying to be it, and it's also simultaneously not trying to be it, because it doesn't want to be Jurassic Park. It doesn't want to be accused of just being a carbon copy of the original. So it picks and chooses. It's almost like it tries to have its cake and eat it a little bit.
Yeah. I think one of the ways that it does that, and kind of when it falls into like the kind of Amblin territory, is like gives you those moments where you see the world through the children's eyes, like whether it's Gray, like the younger boy, like running through the park and up into the hotel room, and you kind of get that sense of excitement that like Spielberg managed to capture in something like E.T., where it's like you see the world through a child's eyes. But then, like the original Jurassic Park, it very quickly like drops like the kids almost, and it is kind of like really focused on the adult story for a lot of it, and the kind of like weird bureaucracy of the park itself, and the kind of the real life like human villains, as opposed to the dinosaurs themselves. So I think we've kind of skirted around it, but would you feel comfortable giving us a brief plot synopsis of this film?
Well, I mean, I haven't prepared anything, but
I like to put people on the spot.
Okay, that's fine. So, I don't think it does. I can't remember. Does it tell us how long after Jurassic Park this is set? I'm not sure it does. Does it?
No,
Is it?
I think we're supposed to assume it's like real life time has passed. So what? It would have been like 22 years or something like that?
Yeah. Okay. So let's say 22 years after the events at Isla Nublar, where obviously lots of people died. It was very tragic. So I'm just trying to think of how I could summarise this. So John Hammond, who was the original owner of the park, presumably, I assume, I don't remember exactly, but presumably he sold all of the rights to Simon Masrani, who decided in his infinite wisdom, because he had lots of money, that he was going to build John Hammond's vision of Jurassic Park, and it was going to be called Jurassic World. And Jurassic World is open to the public, and it is essentially one of the most expensive theme parks in the world. Loads of really rich people can go and look at dinosaurs, but because they're so rich and they're so entitled, these people are bored of your regular dinosaurs. They don't care about Brontosaurus. They don't care about Triceratops. They don't even care about the original T-Rex from the original Jurassic Park. They want something bigger. They want something better. They want more teeth. They want more action. And so the scientists decide in their infinite wisdom that they want to create a brand new dinosaur. We don't know what this dinosaur is made up of until the end, but essentially they splice lots of bits and pieces of different dinosaurs together to make the Indominus Rex. The idea is that they want their stocks and shares to go higher, and they want more interest in this park. They want more sponsorships, and yeah, they want more customers. So, so basically, as corporate, I was going to say corporate America. It's not just corporate America; it's corporate global. As corporate global likes to do, they basically decide to market this brand new dinosaur. But this dinosaur, because it's a mix of all these different versions of dinosaurs, and because it's female as well, because let's be honest, women know everything. Women are the boss. So because it's a female dinosaur, she knows that something's not quite right, and she knows she wants to escape, and so she does. And basically,
the shit hits the fan, right?
I was actually going to say all hell breaks loose, but yeah, the shit hits the fan, exactly. Yeah, so they have this murderous dinosaur on the loose, and they have to try and figure out what the hell they're going to do, because they're just idiotic humans, and this dinosaur is particularly smart. And that's it. That's the best summary I can do.
No, that's perfect. That's a perfect jumping off point to kind of talk about some of these earlier scenes and themes we have throughout the film. And one of them, I think this is a really key scene, because obviously you mentioned the kids' parents are splitting up, they're sent to Death Island. But I think kind of one of the scenes that really jumped out to me in the kind of setup for this is when Claire and Masrani go to visit the Indominus Rex.
So she's intelligent then.
For a dinosaur?
And that?
It tried to break the glass.
I like her spirit. Oh, it's white. You never told me it was white.
Think it'll scare the kids?
The kids? This will give the parents nightmares.
Is that good?
It's fantastic.
What are your thoughts on that scene, and how effectively do they kind of tease out the terror of the creature in this?
Well, I mean, that seems quite interesting in the sense that you kind of get an idea of Simon Masrani and the sort of person that he is.
Yeah.
I think on the exterior, he kind of preaches about, it's all about the customer experience. It's all about making people happy. It's all about, children smiling and, all of that sort of stuff. But ultimately, he is a businessman. And
he kind of very quickly gave me like Richard Branson vibes, where it's like big shit-eating grin out to the world, and then it's like, oh, I'm going to take all my money and put it in offshore bank accounts, so like I don't have to pay taxes in the UK. And it's like, you don't care about the people. You care, like, do you know what I mean? Yeah, you had a few parties for your staff in the 90s, but now you're sodded off to Virgin Island and I don't know, taking your money with you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine. Feel free to cut in at any time. But I kind of like that discussion that he and Claire have, because it is essentially kind of setting up what this company is all about. Claire is basically the person who is essentially, she's basically there for exposition. And I feel quite sorry for Bryce Dallas Howard, because I think Bryce Dallas Howard can give us a lot more than just a really pretty girl in heels with exposition. But, to be honest, I think she actually does quite decent work in this movie for what she's actually given to do, which isn't actually a great deal. But I really like that she is basically there saying, well, this is what you wanted. You wanted something bigger. You wanted more. And he's like, but I just want people to be happy. He's a bit of an idiot, Simon Masrani. I like Irfan Khan, and obviously rest in peace Irfan Khan, because I think he passed away last year. And obviously phenomenal actor. But I do kind of agree with the Richard Branson comparison when it comes to someone like Simon Masrani, because I kind of feel like, yes, he probably has a very public persona of he's an everyman's man kind of thing, but I think he is actually a very shrewd businessman, and essentially it is all about the bottom line, and having a dinosaur like this will please the shareholders, it will bring in a lot of money, and ultimately Claire is basically there to tell the audience, well, this is what you wanted.
Yeah, I think what that scene cleverly does as well is the way we're introduced to both of those characters. Like Simon Masrani, we're introduced to him as this kind of like, hey, he's fun. Like, do you know what I mean? He's learning to fly a helicopter because he wants to be a part of it, and he cares about the customers and the welfare of the dinosaurs. And then the way we're introduced to Claire is like, she's very hard nosed. Do you know what I mean? She's like a quote unquote what they'd call like a boss bitch. Do you know what I mean? Like it all seems to like be like quite negative. She seems to like she doesn't care about her two nephews, because she's all about work. But then what that scene manages to do, and it's in the delivery when Simon Masrani says about like or she can't about like this will give the parents nightmares. And the way Claire says, is that a good thing? You kind of get that dynamic shift where she kind of becomes, like you said, like the conduit for the audience, where it's like, oh shit, like the pennies dropped for her that maybe like the bottom line isn't always the way. And it's I think it's a great scene, and then is obviously led up with our introduction of Owen, who what do you make of the Owen character, and how do you think that the kind of the way we're introduced to him is it effective in this film?
I mean, you mentioned actually the internet's least favourite Chris, which always kind of tickles me a little bit. I don't have a problem with Chris Pratt. This was obviously the time where Chris Pratt
he was the favourite.
Was basically everywhere, wasn't he? I don't have a problem with Chris Pratt. I think Chris Pratt is an attractive man. And
I like him as an actor. I think like some of his like personal beliefs and political beliefs I don't necessarily agree with, but it's I don't think he is downright evil. I think the internet have just taken against him for being a Republican and pro hunting or stuff like that. So
to be perfectly honest, I'll be honest. I don't know a great deal about Chris Pratt's personal life. I mean, like I say, I can't really comment on stuff like that. But as an actor, I mean, I don't find him inoffensive. He's nice to look at, and he often chooses interesting roles. But at this point in his career, he was clearly kind of leaning more towards a leading man kind of role. The problem that I have with Owen, and to a degree Claire as well, is, as I said, kind of going back to the Jurassic Park comparisons, is when you have really great characters in Jurassic Park, and then when you basically create essentially a carbon copy of that movie, you then have to create characters that are, or that you would want to be similar to those characters. And, where Owen is concerned, I mean, he's not really a patch on Sam Neill's character in Jurassic Park. The character's name completely escapes me. It's gone out of my head totally. Because I can't remember.
Yeah, all I can think is Dr. Ian Malcolm, but that's Jeff Goldblum. Yeah.
I've got Ellie Sattler's name in my head. But oh my god, that's really going to annoy me, because how many times have I seen Jurassic Park? And I'm so sorry, I've forgotten his name. It happens sometimes. I get a bit of brain fart and it just disappears. But yeah, Owen as a character, I mean, he's pretty kind of a bland character in many ways. He's just kind of there to be this kind of macho man who just happens to know about dinosaurs. And I mean, I assume we're going to be talking about the Raptors. And I kind of I mean,
Chekov's Raptors, right? It's kind of like, we're making a big deal in the first act. Don't worry, guys, they're coming back for the third act.
It's I mean, the whole kind of relationship that he has with the Raptors. I mean, I seriously question that. Just from what we know from the other Jurassic Park movies, that raptors are supposed to be some of the most brutal, lethal killers in the whole of the dinosaur world. And he mentioned about, I get them to, they imprint on me when they're born. Well, if you want to go out and go to sub-Saharan Africa and find a lion cub and get it to imprint on you, I guarantee you that lion will probably still attack you. So, because it's a wild animal.
Yeah, it's that same, it's like that Werner Herzog documentary Grizzly Man, where it's like this guy went out and lived with bears and was like, look guys, it's going perfectly. Then one day he was mauled and killed by a bear. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like you just cannot. That nature is unpredictable, and I don't quite buy that. And the fact that his character is kind of broad strokes of Dr. Ian Malcolm and Dr. Alan Grant. Yes, I've done a little Google.
Alan Grant. Thank you. Oh, that. Thank you.
It's kind of weird because he kind of feels like a couple of characters in one. Like, do you know what I mean? He's like, we'll bulk him up, we'll get him a little bit sexy. He's a bit of eye candy, but then he's like supposed to be this trainer. But then, do you know what I mean? He kind of feels like both of those two roles in one character, and you don't really get to care about him that much, because like the story doesn't really, apart from the fact, again, we get Chekov's motorbike when he's like kind of fixing that up, and for a moment, for a film as well that kind of seems anti like corporate greed and stuff like that, has like an egregious like steps into a moment when it's a Diet Coke advert, when he's like kind of looking sexy by his motorbike, and Bryce Dallas Howard comes over and he's drinking like a glass bottle of Diet Coke with like the label, and it's like you can't make a film that has something to say about this like corporate sponsorship and how evil is it. And it's like you can't have a line in a film that's like, oh, Verizon Mobile presents the Indominus Rex, and then moments later you've got like clear product placement in the film. It's just it is just so funny that the film itself obviously is a thing of a corporate money making machine. Yeah, and he's talking about
exactly. Yeah, it's completely ridiculous. But I mean, I do appreciate Chris Pratt in a tight top. I'm not going to say that I don't.
Pulses, of course.
Exactly. But it does feel like you've just kind of alluded to. It does feel like incredibly staged, in that they were like, right, we need a scene that the women are going to swoon at, and the gay men are going to swoon at. So let's get Chris Pratt in a really tight top. He's a bit dirty. He's working on his bike. He's sweaty, and everyone's just going to swoon. And I get that. I get that you need to have that. You need to have sex appeal in your characters. I completely get that. But when you compare, the thing is, the problem with this movie is you watch this movie and you could sit and watch it and enjoy it. If this was the only Jurassic movie that existed, everyone would probably be like, yeah, this is fun. I like this. It's cool. It's enjoyable. It's a fun popcorn movie. But the problem is, you inevitably will compare it to Jurassic Park every single time. And even when you look at the characters, when you look at Jurassic Park, Alan Grant didn't have to stand there in a tight top, sweaty, drinking a Diet Coke, because that wasn't the point of that character.
We did get that moment though of Jeff Goldblum with his shirt open, looking laying back, looking sexy.
Okay, I will give you that. But Jeff Goldblum he's a different kind of sexy. He's not like like a super ripped kind of guy. He's got like a very raw sex appeal that kind of transcends the way that he looks. It's all about him and his personality and his character.
So when we're talking, obviously we're just kind of touching about casting. I don't think this film makes any like allusions, and it doesn't try and hide the fact at all that Vincent D'Onofrio's character is a bad guy, right? Like, it's like the moment we're introduced to him, it's like, let's weaponize these raptors. Like, it's just instantly, and it is that thing as well. It's like, if you're gonna cast a bad guy, of course Vincent D'Onofrio is one of the names you go for, right?
Yeah, he might as well have had, been literally twirling his mustache and going, what, that's how obvious a character, an antagonist he is. And Vincent D'Onofrio is, he's one of the greatest character actors ever, really. He's absolutely outstanding. He's phenomenal in Daredevil. But he is that kind of actor that you do tend to go to when you have a villain role. It's exactly like, someone like Mark Strong. You would go to Mark Strong if you want a mustache twirling villain. And I do kind of feel like the whole let's weaponize the Raptors is... I'm not really kind of invested in that. To be honest, they could take that out of the movie and the movie would probably be better for it, to be honest. I know that they obviously want a reason to have Vincent D'Onofrio there in as an, you know, because he's supposed to be like this head of security or whatever he is. I'm not even 100% sure what that character's supposed to do, other than he comes in and says, "Let's weaponize these raptors." That's basically all he says.
Yeah.
So there's a real issue with this movie and what these characters are actually supposed to be doing. I mean, we get a good idea of what Claire's there to do and what Owen's there to do, but all of these other people, like even the people who Owen works with, I'm still not entirely certain what they're actually there to do, because he's the only one who seems to be able to really know these animals. Because you get that scene with the guy who's when the pig gets loose, and that young lad is trying to obviously get the pig, and he ends up falling into the raptor enclosure. Which, I mean, clearly we have a good idea of one of two things that's going to happen. Either the guy's going to be mauled to death, or Chris Pratt's going to save the day. And so it's a really obvious setup. But again, it's kind of going back to Jurassic Park, and that's the problem with this movie. As much as I enjoy it, and I do enjoy it a lot, you can't help but compare it, and that's its main problem.
Yeah, I guess Vincent D'Onofrio is what, like, almost the fill-in for Wayne Knight's character, really, isn't he? But like, let's amp up the evil a bit more. Whereas like Wayne Knight's character was a bit of like a bumbling idiot who had selfish means and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Here is a guy who actually wants to like take these creatures and like make them into like killing machines, like on a grand scale. You mentioned a few minutes ago about like the people around Owen, and there's some, like, the thing is with this film, there's some great people in the cast in like these smaller roles that, like, I don't know, some of it, there's an element of it where it feels like they're massively underutilized, whether it's someone like an Omar Sy who works with Owen, or I don't know, I think Jake Johnson is perfectly cast.
Oh, I love Jake Johnson. I love him. Genuinely love him.
Him and Lauren Lapkus really like get like I think they're, but like there's something like, especially with those guys working with the Raptors, it's almost like that's like an interesting smaller story in itself. Do you know what I mean? Just like a story set around this like these guys try, like almost like, I don't know, like Free Willy but with dinosaurs. Do you know what I mean? As opposed to like, but I guess that's something they can't do with the Jurassic Park property, to go, you know what we're going to do to reboot it? We're going to go nice and small and make it about a nice character study instead.
It won't quite work, will it?
So one of the scenes I wanted to mention as well, like back to the Indominus Rex, is that scene when Owen and Claire go to investigate, and we assume as the audience that the Indominus Rex has got out. When obviously we get that switch that the Indominus Rex is in the paddock, can you remember like how that made you feel the first time you watched that?
Well, to be honest, I can't. And I think the reason I can't is because, again, you have so many comparisons with this movie in Jurassic Park. Yeah. But to me, something like that was obvious.
Yep.
And I still don't understand to this day why Claire had to get in her car before she rang the station, essentially, to find out where the Indominus Rex was. Because surely that's the first thing that you would do, is you'd find, because it's going to be in the vicinity of where you are. If it's anywhere. I mean, maybe she was just being a bit selfish and she thought, well, I'll get in my car and drive away from this area because I'm going to save my skin. But it obviously, the movie wants us to think that it got out. But we've learned from Jurassic Park that these dinosaurs are not dumb. So you would kind of think, well, surely this creature that's made from all of this different dinosaur DNA, and the science behind it, to be honest, I think it's already been debunked, the whole finding DNA in mosquitoes in amber. But the creation of a brand new species, I'm sure scientists probably will be trying to do that at some point. I don't know, they tried it in Deep Blue Sea as well, didn't they? And a lot of people do kind of see Jurassic World as Deep Blue Sea with dinosaurs. But, I don't think they're comparable at all, really, personally. But, yeah, I guess I genuinely can't remember what I thought at the time. It was a long time ago, and it's not really, like when I said about when I saw Jurassic Park for the first time, that really stuck with me, because it was such an amazing thing to see. But movies like Jurassic World are a bit ten a penny. Like, you've kind of, if you've seen one, you've seen them all. So there's nothing really about this movie that kind of makes it stand out, which I feel like I'm being really harsh on Jurassic World.
No. I think it is that thing that once you start to look at it under the microscope, you start to do you know what I mean? The sheen and the glitz of it all fades away very quickly. Do you know what I mean? It is quite easy to pick holes in this film, like even down to the way that lack of character development, and it almost doesn't even play within the rules of a disaster movie. Like, normally, like in a disaster movie, it'll be like somebody is set up as like a bad person, then they'll get their comeuppance. And like in this, we get Claire's assistant Zara, who, for all intents and purposes, is probably just a bit fed up of like running Claire's errands. But in the next breath, it is her job. But like, I don't think she deserves the end that she gets, right? And that just feels like a thing of going, well, you know what? We got this wicked cool, like the guys at Image Light and Magic have created this amazing underwater dinosaur. We're gonna have to show it off because, again, spoiler for the end, like we've got a Chekov's dinosaur here that we're gonna have to, but we can't waste the asset, so we need a kill like midway through the film. It's like, you know what? She was a little bit snotty. Let's just throw her in and get her killed. And it was like, I remember the first time seeing it, being like, I don't think she didn't deserve to die.
Yeah, no, but I think that's kind of the point, isn't it? And I do kind of feel that Zara's death is particularly gratuitous. But also, in that scene, there's obviously a huge crowd of people, the pterodactyls or whatever they're supposed to be, I assume they're pterodactyls, are out. They're attacking people kind of on this strip. And it's kind of set up in a similar kind of way to, well, I kind of look at it and see like Disney World, where you've got like one street with these shops kind of, and it's really long, and you get to the end and you have like the Magic Castle. But in this version, you basically get to the end and you've got that huge kind of Jurassic World auditorium kind of thing. But I kind of feel like in this scene they were like, well, we need a spectacle. We need to show something off. But if they'd have just picked a random person in the crowd, that obviously wouldn't have mattered to the audience, because it's a little bit kind of self-aware, this movie, because this movie knows that the people who are watching want bigger and better. We are the crowds at Jurassic World. They know that we saw Jurassic Park and that we're like, well, we don't want to just see a T-Rex. We want to see something bigger. It's very self-aware, and I will give Jurassic World that. It is very self-aware. It knows that the people who are watching are the people who are watching. So that's fine. I'll give it points for that. But it knows that if it just picks a random character from this kind of boardwalk, we're not going to care about that. It's similarly not going to pick one of those two young boys, because no one wants to go to a movie like this and see an animal or a child get killed. It's just the unwritten rule of a family Hollywood action fun movie. You don't see animals or children get killed. So the children are immediately out, which left Zara as the only character that we knew.
Named character.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate, actually, that she had to have that happen to her, because it was overly gratuitous. The fact that she was essentially being drowned. I mean, it's really shocking, actually. The pterodactyls were drowning her. And then to basically get eaten by, I can't even remember what that dinosaur's called, but the big swimming one. I'm so terrible with dinosaur names. If my nephew was here, he would be able to tell me what the dinosaurs were called.
There's a 4-year-old willing to give us a telling off for not getting all these names right.
But yeah, the big swimming one. But yeah, it's particularly gruesome. It really is. But the movie wants to show us what we want to see. And unfortunately, that is what we, the audience, want. So
yeah, you mentioning the film giving us what we want to see, and how this film has so many comparisons to Jurassic Park itself. I guess a fill-in for that is the paddock, the herbivore paddock scene when they're in the gyrospheres, right? Because we kind of literally get a redoing of the first time that the three main characters see the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park in that moment.
But it's kind of lost all of its awe-inspiring, because you will every single time you will remember the first time in Jurassic Park when you saw the dinosaurs, when you saw the brachiosaurs, and that swell. Yeah, the score comes in. You will always remember that. But this, it's just not as memorable. It's unfortunate, but it's true. It does utilise the children, I think, in this movie a little bit better than maybe Jurassic Park does. But the children in this movie, they're a little bit more bland. Like, at least with Lex and Tim, they had kind of individual personalities, whereas Zach and Gray, they kind of don't. They're just kind of very standard, like, the older one's into girls and the younger one's into dinosaurs, and that's kind of it. But other than that, there's not really anything about them. The kind of the wonderment has gone, unfortunately, and it's Jurassic Park's fault. But it's also kind of Jurassic World trying to emulate this. And I mean, I'm pretty certain there will be people out there who've seen Jurassic World first, because let's be honest, some people are younger than us. I mean, damn and blast to them. But there are people out there who maybe saw this movie first, and maybe they think this movie is, the greatest of the Jurassics. Because then they've seen Jurassic Park and they've gone, oh, well, it's not as good. I mean, who would say that? But I'm sure there are people out there who would. And I don't want to take anything away from those people, because if this was the first movie that you saw, then I'm certain that those scenes would stand out to you, that you would go, oh, this is amazing. Look at these amazing dinosaurs. But for people like us who grew up on Jurassic Park, it is different. It's always going to be different,
Yeah, it gets to that point where it's like showing like a younger person, like, music was like great back in my day, and you play them a band, they're like, it's rubbish. What are you talking about? Because like they've just grown up being used to certain things, whether it is like the thing is, of like, I think there's a certain cut off of like people, like there's certain people who love practical effects and like the puppets that created for the first one, whereas I don't want to tar everyone with the same brush, but there probably are younger people who are so used to CGI graphics that they're like, no, this is my Jurassic film. And I think that's great. Like the Jurassic, like the kind of reintroduction of the Jurassic Park franchise has created like one of the greatest little kids TV shows called Camp Crustacean.
Cretaceous?
No, Camp
Yeah,
Cretaceous.
crustaceans are something different.
Yeah, that's underwater. So yeah. I watch it with my son, and like he absolutely loves it, and that is like, yeah, again, that will be his introduction to the Jurassic Park franchise and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Do you know what I mean? And it's like yeah, but yeah, to jump back into the film and kind of like, is there like any scenes in this kind of midsection that really stand out to you that feel like we need to discuss, or should we get into the kind of closing moments of this film?
I mean, the only one that kind of springs to mind is when Owen and Claire find the dying brachiosaur. It's made very clear that the Indominus Rex isn't hunting for food, it's just hunting for sport. It's just doing it because it can. It gives you an idea of the mindset of the Indominus Rex, that it literally doesn't care all that much. And that as a creature, I mean, if you think about how this creature has lived, it's actually quite, an interesting thing to think about. If you look at the kind of, well, it's not a modern fascination, but everyone's been to a zoo or a safari park or something like that. And obviously you have animals in captivity. And I think it does kind of raise an interesting question about keeping animals in captivity. I think obviously this isn't a podcast about about the morals and ethics of keeping animals in captivity, but I do.
It can be.
I mean, I'm not sure what that has to do with the Coppola family, but okay. But it is quite interesting when you think that this is a creature that is the first of its kind. There is nothing else like it in the world, and it's been bred to be a killer. It's been bred to be huge with huge teeth. It's been bred to hunt, and it's in a cage. It can't do that. It doesn't have the facility to do that. It's something that kind of calls back to Jurassic Park when they are feeding I think it's the T-Rex. They're feeding the T-Rex with a goat or something. And Alan Grant, I think it's Alan Grant, mentions something about that, this is a creature that's supposed to hunt. Like, you're just giving it a goat on a chain. Like, what is that going to do for this creature? And it's exactly the same principle, except this is a creature that, essentially ate its own sibling. So it lives alone. It lives alone in a cage. Can you imagine living alone in a cage?
It draws up that thing that people say about, like, if they say like something's off with someone, and it's like, oh yeah, that's the type of person who definitely ate their twin in the womb. Do you know what I mean? If someone's got like almost like sociopathic tendencies, I guess that line really like kind of drew that up to me. It's like, oh shit, yeah, this is a bad guy right here. Like, we need to be aware. One of the things I wanted to like mention in this film that I guess I have a little bit of an issue with is the kiss between Claire and Owen, because I don't like it. It's kind of out of nowhere, like in the kind of like maelstrom of when everything's going like batshit crazy on like the promenade, and I don't like. It just feels like for me personally, it feels like a weird placement for that moment. Do you know what I mean? And I kind of like, I don't know, like, I don't even know if this film needed that, like, because it can't. Yeah, their whole like they went on a date before kind of thing. Like, there's a certain charm to it, but in the next breath, it's a bit like, really? Do we need this? Like I don't know. How do you feel about that kind of love, like BC plot?
I have a real issue with movies that feel like in order for the relationship between a man and a woman to have value, that they need to have romance. And that they need to kiss at an inopportune moment, just to show how much they like each other. It's really ridiculous for a start. But all of this backstory between Owen and Claire is kind of inconsequential. I mean, they could literally just be work colleagues. He works at the park, she works at the park. They didn't have to add this romantic element, which does feel quite forced, actually. I do agree with you. It feels superfluous, especially in that scene where you've just had a very traumatic experience. You've just been attacked by a load of dinosaurs, and then all of a sudden you're kissing each other. I really don't think... I mean, I've not been attacked by dinosaurs, but I really don't think that I would grab the nearest guy that I'd recently been on a date with and snog him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like I'd experienced a traumatic event. I might need to sit down, But yeah, it feels incredibly tacked on, and the whole relationship between them feels tacked on. Why can't you just have a man and a woman be work colleagues, work well together, and be friends at the end? I mean, come on, it's not rocket science.
There's that whole thing in it as well that the kind of backstory tries to make us believe that Chris Pratt is an everyman and a bit of they basically try and make you think that he's his character from Parks and Rec, before he kind of got shredded, because what kind of guy turns up to a date in board shorts? And then the rest of the film he's kind of in a tightly fitted Henley top, looking sexy as fuck. And it's we're supposed to believe this is the same guy who turns up to dates in board shorts, where his outfit is just kind of chic and on point when he's at work. And this brings me on, their whole thing brings me on to probably the most egregious thing in this film, is why anyone thought it was a good idea, and it makes no sense, that Claire is in heels for the whole goddamn film.
I know. I mean, I have to give props to Bryce Dallas Howard, because if she can run in heels and not fall over and seriously injure herself, then she is a hell of a woman. There
are close-ups of those heels and her running, and it's like Colin Trevorrow or John Schwartzman, as the cinematographer, going this is fucking crazy. Look, she's in heels.
I mean, I can understand it from a point of view that, yes, she was in her work clothes, so she was wearing that very nice suit, and obviously in her work she wears nice suits, she wears heels. She obviously didn't have a change of footwear. She's adapted to getting shit done, because, as I said, women get shit done. She's adapted to getting shit done in heels. But I kind of don't see... I know, because a lot of focus was on the fact, Bryce Dallas Howard is running in heels. And there was a lot of weird focus on that. If you look at it from a narrative point of view, she's not the sort of character who would turn up to work in flats. I think, she's like you said earlier, she is given this very kind of typical, I'm a working woman, and I'm really strict, and I'm really assertive, and I'm really powerful in my job. And to do that, I have to wear a smart suit and heels. She's that kind of character. So
angular haircut, do you know what I mean? It was sharp edges.
Yeah, exactly. And she's styled in the way that her character would be styled in real life. So I honestly, when I see Bryce Dallas Howard run in heels, I don't think it's particularly fantastical. I just think that she's incredible for actually doing it. So I give all the props to Bryce Dallas Howard, because I think she's amazing.
So I guess something we probably should talk about with this film is how it looks, and John Schwartzman's cinematography. Do you think it's a particularly flashy film? Is there moments that jump out? What do you think of the cinematography of this film?
I feel like I'm repeating myself quite a lot on this podcast, and I do apologise.
No, it's fine.
it's unfortunate in a way. It's a really hard thing, I think, to take on a movie like this as a cinematographer when Jurassic Park looks as good as it does. It could never really hold up to what Jurassic Park does. Although I do think that it is a reasonably good-looking movie. I think it does have some really interesting shots in the movie. Effects-wise, certainly some of the CG hasn't aged particularly well. Some of the puppet work that they do, especially with the Raptors, still looks reasonably good. But then it's a practical puppet, so it would. But I certainly wouldn't say it's an unattractive film. I think that there are certain points in it where you get a real feel that this is kind of a really busy theme park. And then it's kind of juxtaposed with these scenes of just like, lush green landscapes and rolling fields. And you get this kind of feeling that this is a huge place. And that's obviously down to what Jonathan Schwartzman's done with the cinematography to make you really feel like this could be a real place. And that you could have all of these different areas. You could have this kind of bustling central hub. And you can have all of these like rolling fields. You've got a little monorail or something that kind of takes you places. So I certainly don't think it's an unattractive movie. Certain scenes are a little bit dark in nature, but I kind of feel like, well, maybe that's my TV. I don't know, but certain things do kind of feel a little bit darker. But on the whole, I don't think it's unattractive. So I'm not going to sit here and slate what John Schwartzman's done because it must be a really difficult thing to do a movie like this when the movie that came before it is so iconic. So I have to give pretty much everyone who worked on this movie props for making something that is actually quite decent, really. As long as you don't compare it too much.
Well, I think it is that thing that obviously, like, everybody who worked on this is kind of hamstrung by Jurassic Park in a way, in that, like, like I just assumed that the score, like when the film came out, I was it's gonna be John Williams again, and then it's like you feel like people don't get the credit that they deserve because you're like, oh no, it's actual Michael Ciamino. Like it's do you know what I mean? It's somebody else. You're like, oh, that's like, and then like there's an element that you feel like with like John Schwartzman, it's like, oh, can you just create the same look as Jurassic Park in a way? Do you know what I mean? Like, and the film, I think the film is good in the fact that it's very much like a love letter, and it feels like Colin Trevorrow is like the Jake Johnson character, where he probably was turning up to set wearing an original Jurassic Park t-shirt and stuff like that. But I don't know, it's that thing you almost like think if somebody who I don't know, didn't know the franchise, it would have been like interesting to see if it was like somebody like put in their hands, do you know what I mean? Kind of like given the script, here you go, make this crazy film. But obviously Colin Trevorrow must have done some good, and so has John Schwartzman, because they are both back for the film's second sequel, Jurassic World Dominion. But let's talk about how this film ends, and all of these Chekov's items are brought back up in the third and final act of this film. So I guess the first one, and it kind of like once Hoskin has his takeover of the park and he wants to track down the Indominus Rex with the Raptors, and Owen gets to get Chekov's motorbike and go after the Indominus Rex with the Raptors. Yeah, what do you think of that scene when you've kind of got all the like tactical team being taken off left, right, and centre once the Indominus Rex kind of gets the Raptors on side?
I mean, I must admit, I didn't see the Raptors kind of forming a bond with the Indominus Rex. That was something I didn't see coming. But the scene of like Chris Pratt on his bike surrounded by raptors, I mean, that was one of the most marketable images of the movie because it was in all the trailers. So everyone knew that this was going to happen.
It's the cover of the Blu-ray as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like, in a way, the movie spoiled it because some things audiences don't need to see, in the marketing. And this scene in particular, where he does kind of, get the raptors and they're, he's side by side with them on his bike and all of that, is a really cool shot, actually. I think that could have quite easily been saved just for the movie, but I didn't see the team up coming because then obviously we realise that the Indominus Rex is part raptor and that's how they can communicate. I mean, it kind of doesn't work so well towards the end in a sense that when you have the team of raptors and you have 4 raptors and you have the Indominus Rex, and obviously Owen has, up to this point, has been the alpha of the pack, and now the Indominus Rex is miraculously all of a sudden the alpha of the new pack. So then obviously the raptors kind of turn on the humans, and when that happens, obviously, I mean, it's pretty obvious, really, but that everyone apart from Chris Pratt is going to die. Omar Sy lives, doesn't he? If I recall. Yeah.
Yes. I think so. Yeah. I think you see him in the end. But I think what is like one of the things that's interesting in that is it kind of like goes a bit like found footage horror for a moment when you've kind of like you got those interesting shots of like their kind of body cams and stuff like that, and like them being taken down because obviously you need to put Bryce Dallas Howard's and the kids somewhere. So even though they've had an opportunity to evacuate the kids, for some reason they're in the back of the van in the thick of it. I find those bits like just on like visually quite interesting. I think that it's kind of it feels quite modern. Oh, yeah, it kind of feels a bit like Wreck, like the Spanish found footage horror film.
I can't say I've seen that because I'm not a huge horror fan, but
but like it has like it feels interesting to do something like that in like a mainstream Hollywood film because it gets quite disorientated. That's a moment when the film itself is literally quite dark, not just like tonally. That where it kind of makes sense because like you almost feel like those guys themselves, or it's a bit disorientating. And if I can remember rightly, in the cinema, like I guess they would have done like cool things in surround sound. You almost like get that thing of like where the hell is the raptor going to come from, and then when they kind of take them down, it's a bit of a surprise. But that is something I like in this.
It felt very Predator to me. You know the movie Predator. With the little monitors and everything that show who's alive and who's not, and then obviously they're in the control center and they can see one by one like all of these people are dying, which I kind of really like actually. You kind of have those shots. You don't see anything. I mean, like I say, I'm not a huge fan of horror. I don't watch much of it, but the horror that is the most effective is the horror that you don't see. So when you have a single kind of camera and all you can see is a man's legs and he's being dragged by something, that is actually, I agree with you, that's actually really effective. It probably is one of the best scenes in the movie because you don't really have anything like that comparably in Jurassic Park. So I like that it actually tried to do something a little bit different. That kind of whole raptor scene. But like I say, it's just kind of one of those unfortunate things. It always kind of reminds me of Austin Powers, where you've got like the unnamed guard. And, he's got a wife and kids at home, and it just so happens that he's one of the unnamed guards who's going to die today. And it's a bit like that, isn't it? If you've got characters who are soldiers they don't have names. They are probably all going to die. So those poor actors.
It's like the kind of security guard eating a snack, like in the Indominus Rex.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, you're gonna die, aren't you? They might as well all have red shirts on in the classic like Star Trek fashion, where it's like you knew that those were the disposable characters when they went on a mission. But this kind of like third act of this film kind of just if anything, it does ramp up and get crazier and crazier. Obviously, we get the reveal that, well, it's not really a surprise that Hoskins and Dr. Wu were working together to kind of get this hybrid, I don't know, like embryos out of there and sold. And again, like you're talking about like this film getting to like horrific scenes. I think the way that like that shot of Hoskins like getting his hand bitten
Oh, it's brilliant.
It's pretty yeah. It's really cathartic as an audience, but all like it's kind of like you are there kind of like, yes, he fucking deserves that. But at the same time, it's like it feels like it's really pushing the boundaries of like a 12A certificate as well.
Well, it's exactly the same with Jurassic Park. If you look back and see what Jurassic Park did, it was pushing the boundaries of that family-friendly certificate, and that was one of the reasons I think why my grandparents were so so shocked that it was as gruesome as it was. But we loved it, so I think it gave me nightmares. But I will still, rant about that movie. So I mean. I certainly do agree with you that I feel like this movie gets to a point and then it kind of brings out not just the big guns, but it literally brings out every single gun in its arsenal, because it is literally like, right, we need to reach a conclusion, but we also need to make the audience really happy. So let's literally bring out a greatest hits of Jurassic, and it does feel very much like they've strategically done that in a way, like I say, to kind of speak to the audience that it knows that's there, really, what we want to see.
So obviously we get the ultimate team up of the Raptors and, well, Blue and a T-Rex versus the Indominus Rex, which culminates in the Indominus Rex being eaten by that big water dinosaur, which I think is the official name.
Yes.
Right? What do you make of that kind of whole like fight sequence that happens?
I mean, it's very standard, isn't it? In kind of blockbusters, to have this kind of epic fight scene at the end. I mean, I think you could argue that a lot of these movies, even Jurassic Park to a degree, there's a lot of contrivances in the script that miraculously something will appear at the point exactly when it needs to. And, as much as I love Jurassic Park, you have that bit at the end where the T-Rex miraculously appears out of nowhere to save them from the Raptors. So this is kind of exactly what happens again. But it is a lot of fun. I do really enjoy the fact that you have these huge beasts fighting essentially in this kind of strip where you've got all of these like toy stores and all of this kind of merch. It's really all, like I say, this movie feels so self-aware. It knows that you're going to go out and you're going to buy a T-shirt. You're going to buy, a drinks container. You're going to buy a T-Rex toy. It knows exactly what it's doing. But and then you've got these dinosaurs basically destroying all these shops and everything, and it's a lot of fun. I wouldn't say it's anything spectacular. The only thing that really is for me is when the massive, ginormous sea water dinosaur, whatever it's called. I'm so sorry. I wish I knew the names.
No, I don't know it either. Don't worry.
But that was a big surprise for me. I remember being genuinely surprised at that. I mean, really, it's standing right by the tank, so it's not really, shouldn't really be a surprise. But when it comes out of the water and it, grabs it by the neck and takes it under, it does feel like the only possible conclusion, because the T-Rex and Blue are not going to be able to kill that creature. So there was really only one thing that could happen, really, if you think about it.
I think on rewatch as well, you get the feeling as well, like, the effects artist has spent so long creating that creature, it's gonna have to play a part at the end, right? It's gonna have to like crop up at least one more time to kind of get their money's worth. And as I said, like, it is like it's Chekov's sea monster by this point, where it's like, you get that. I'll admit, on first time watch, I was probably like in the cinema, like, whoa, what the hell was that? Like, and loving it. But like, I guess it's, I don't know, part of the worries of doing a film podcast a lot of the time is just like, I ruin these films for myself by just like examining them, as opposed to just like leaving my brain in a bucket at the door and just enjoying them for the silly popcorn fun that they are.
Yeah, I get that.
So what do you well, yeah, so this film kind of neatly wraps up at the end, right? Everyone kind of lives happily ever after, and most importantly, the T-Rex has Isla Nublar to itself. Yeah, it's like, what, like, do you think does it leave you feeling satisfied?
I think if you take this film as an entity in itself, then you have to say yes.
Yeah.
In a sense that you reach kind of this natural conclusion. I mean, you could ask quite a lot of questions of, I mean, why did they do this in the first place? That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
But I think if we talked about that, we'd be here forever. But as a, like you say, as a fun popcorn movie, it delivers. I feel like I have been especially harsh on this movie, on this episode in particular. But it is really so difficult, especially if you do love Jurassic Park and you have an affinity with Jurassic Park. It is very difficult not to compare it. But I do like the callbacks to Jurassic Park. I think they're used sparingly enough to not be too obvious. You know, when they get the Jeeps out and you've got the little binoculars and all of that sort of stuff. I really like those little callbacks. You know, to even the banner when dinosaurs ruled the world and all of that sort of stuff. It makes this movie feel like it is a kind of calling back to an old friend. It's not exactly the old friend. It's like, you know, your old friend's cousin that you kind of know, but it's not really your friend. You know, it's just like someone that is related to your friend.
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, I don't hate this movie. I actually quite enjoy it. I know it doesn't sound like I do, but I do. Yeah. And the fact that, you know, you get the end with the roar and the T-Rex, and I mean, I still don't know why the T-Rex and the Raptor all of a sudden are best friends. But, you know, sometimes you have to just switch off. You have to, you know, it's just, you just have to kind of take it for what it is. Jurassic World is a perfectly fine movie.
Well, like, from what I remember, it feels very much like a standalone film anyway, because as I say, from what I remember, the sequel doesn't really I'm going off guesswork. It's been a while since I've watched the sequel, but that doesn't really seem to like pick up. Do you know what I mean? It kind of feels like those characters in a different situation, as opposed to as opposed to like we're dealing with the aftermath entirely of that or whatever. So yeah, we talked about, you've obviously given this, you personally feel like you've given this film a kick. Here is where we kind of get to score the film, and how we do that on this podcast is, first of all, picking out the perfect wine pairing for Jurassic World. Em, what would it be?
Well, I'll be completely honest. I am not a wine connoisseur. I don't really know anything about wine other than I like Pinot Grigio. And that's basically my knowledge of wine. So I did have to do a bit of online searching for this. And what I found out is there is such a thing as amber wine.
Perfect.
And it's also called orange wine, but I kind of like the whole, link to Jurassic Park with the amber. It's apparently made with, if you keep the skin on the grapes, it apparently gives it this kind of orangey tinge. But I quite like the idea of amber wine. And apparently it comes from Georgia, the country, not the American state.
Yeah.
But it dates back thousands of years as well. So it's got a lot of history, amber wine, or orange wine, as it's often called. So I thought it would be good to go for a Georgian amber wine. And I went online and I was like, typed into Google, Georgian amber wine. And the one that kind of came up as being quite a popular one was something called a Tabani AOC amber. I don't know if it's available in your local Tesco, but if anyone happens across some Georgian amber wine, then maybe give it a go. But you can buy it online.
That's perfect, and it feels like it needs to be the oldest kind of bottle you can find, just to keep in with the prehistoric theme of this film. And I always like to ask how much you're paying for that. And I've recently changed it up to ask you, would this be a bottom shelf wine, a middle shelf, or a top shelf wine?
Are you still there?
Yeah. Hello?
Petros?
Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Are you there?
Hello?
Oh, hi.
I'm
Hi.
here. Hello.
Hi, I lost you. You froze on me.
Oh, sorry about that. Do you want me to I'll ask that question
Okay.
again? So, as I like to ask on here in regards to how much you're paying for that bottle of wine, in brackets, film. And the way I do it now is asking, is it a bottom shelf, a middle shelf, or top shelf wine?
Well, I actually took this question quite literally. And I found the price of the Tabani AOC Amber. And I found out that it retails for £12.95. And I kind of thought, well, that's actually makes sense, because I think that would be a middle shelf wine at £12.95.
Yep.
And really, Jurassic World is very much a middle shelf movie. As far as I'm concerned, it's not a terrible movie. It's not a great movie. It is in the middle. So middle shelf, I think, works for me.
Yep, perfect. But I couldn't agree with you anymore. And would you recommend that people watch Jurassic World if they haven't already?
I would recommend they watch it,
Mm-hmm.
but I would basically say that if you've seen Jurassic Park, then you will find yourself comparing it a lot. If you haven't seen Jurassic Park, would I recommend it if you haven't seen Jurassic Park? If you haven't seen Jurassic Park, I would recommend Jurassic Park over this. But if this is the only thing that you have available and you want some dinosaur fun, because who doesn't want dinosaur fun? Then I would recommend it. Like I say, it's not a terrible movie. It just suffers from comparison to Jurassic Park. But
yeah, I think you could definitely watch it as, like, you could probably skip out The Lost World and 3 and do Jurassic Park. Maybe the next weekend watch Jurassic World. I don't know. I say that I've got a soft spot for number 3, but we haven't got time to talk about it right now.
We've talked too much about Jurassic Park in this episode already. So
one thing I like to do on this podcast is to see if there's any connections in this film to the Coppola family elsewhere, whether it's an actor who's worked with someone on the cast or crew who has worked with a Coppola, somebody else. Did you manage to find any Coppola connections?
Not really.
Don't worry. I've got a few here, and I'll list them off just so we can kind of close the net and see where these people link up to the Coppolas elsewhere. So Judy Greer, who plays the children's mother in this, is in Adaptation with Nicolas Cage and Three Kings with Spike Jonze. Vincent D'Onofrio plays Orson Welles in Ed Wood, which Stephanie Schwartzman, John Schwartzman's younger sister, worked in the costume department for. Ifran Khan is also in The Amazing Spider-Man, which John Schwartzman was, again, the DOP. Jake Johnson is in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse as Peter B. Parker, alongside Nicolas Cage.
Of course! Why didn't I think of that?
And last but not least, Lauren Lapkus is in Between Two Ferns, the movie, as is Jason Schwartzman, and is also in The Unicorn, which is cinematographed by Jonathan Schwartzman and directed by Robert Schwartzman, Jason and Jonathan's younger brother. There we go. That's all the connections. Just if you got your bingo card at home and you're kind of trying to figure this, or you got your string and your photos on your wall like a maniac, you can figure that out, guys. So I like to close these out with asking the impossible questions of this show, which makes me so glad I am on the asking end as opposed to the receiving end. And the first one is, which of the Coppola family member would you keep, but in doing so, you get rid of the filmography of all of the other family members?
Now, originally, my first instinct was to go for Sofia Coppola. But then I realised it would remove Francis Ford Coppola's exquisite Bram Stoker's Dracula, which, as I said, I am a huge fan of. So, to be honest, I think I would have to keep Francis Ford Coppola over all of the others, including Nicolas Cage. I'm so sorry. I feel like I've let you down.
No. That's great. I love it when people do it on like a totally like selfish basis. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I've had some lovely people on who have been so selfless and been like, oh, for like their reason a lot of the time for Francis Ford Coppola is like the ripple effects he's cast across like Hollywood as a whole, and I love it when people come on and go, I really like this person because I like that film and I don't want to lose it. So yeah, no, hats off to you. Amazing. Are they the greatest film family of all time?
I mean, I think that there are a lot of film families in Hollywood that are incredibly important. I mean, you've got the Barrymore family, you've got actual Warner Brothers, without the Warner Brothers, there would be no Warner Brothers.
Exactly.
You've obviously got the Houston family, but I kind of feel like all of those families, if you look at the Barrymores and the Houstons as an example, none of those are as prolific as the Coppola family. When you look at the whole kind of family tree that obviously you're looking at in your podcast, I mean, it's just astonishing how many people and how many talented people can be in one family. Yeah. So I kind of feel like you have to say they are the greatest film family of all time, because there's no other family that kind of beats them in, the number of performances, number of films, the number of people in the family who are professionals in Hollywood. So yeah, I think they have to be the greatest film family of all time.
Yeah, I definitely feel like they've like strong-armed that just by like their sheer numbers almost. Just by like, do you know what I mean? Instead of like, I don't know, having like a small posse who are like amazing, they're like, do you know what? We'll just get a massive posse and then just make it undeniable that we like. And if you don't say we're the greatest, we'll beat you up. That's the kind of vibe I get from the Coppola family.
Yeah.
And possibly the most important question on this podcast is, what does Bill Murray say to Scarlett Johansson at the end of Lost in Translation?
Oh God, this is so hard. This is the reason why I immediately went for Sofia Coppola for that first question, because I love Lost in Translation
Amazing.
so much. I'm such a huge fan of the movie, and it's a really, really special movie for so many reasons. And I think The Whisper at the end is one of those reasons why I think it's so special, because I've always kind of seen that as kind of a metaphor for it's no one else's business what two people say to each other. In that kind of moment of, when you are about to part ways. Yeah. It's even though it's a movie about, these two characters, Bob and Charlotte, I kind of really like that they're still allowed this one single private moment. Because all relationships, whether they're platonic or romantic or whatever, deserve these private moments. And it's a weird thing to say when you're talking about a movie that, it deserves to have a private moment. But I kind of feel like these characters do. But ultimately, you've asked the question, so I feel like I've got to answer. So I like to think it would be something like, I'll be seeing you soon, or maybe something like, I hope you know how much I love you, or something like that, because, just to kind of cement how these two people feel about each other. But really, I kind of always come back to the fact that we don't know, and that we never will know, because Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson have never said what he said to her. I really like that there's secrets out there, that sometimes movies are all about, magic. And that having a secret like that is makes it more magical, really, than finding out that, he said something, he could have said something completely ridiculous, like, have you bought apples at the supermarket recently? It could just be something like that. But I really like that we don't know. I like to think that it's something really sweet and nice and lovely, that these two characters will see each other again. But who knows?
That's a beautiful reading on the kind of end of that film, and how it kind of gives the characters a chance to have like a quiet moment for themselves, and something I've never really thought about. That's a perfect answer for that question. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, thanks.
So yeah, obviously you host Verbal Diorama. You've just recently reached 100 episodes. A massive congratulations on that. Where can people keep up to date with everything you're doing, whether it is the podcast, or obviously you write for film stories as well? Yeah, where's the best place to keep up to date with all of that?
Well, I mean, the best place to find me generally is on Twitter at Verbal Diorama. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook as well, but I'm more active on Twitter than anything. Yep. But Verbal Diorama is basically all about the history and legacy of movies you know and movies you don't. So I like to take a bit of a deep dive into the making of films, essentially. I find it really fascinating how things were made. I can't say Jurassic World is on my list to do anytime soon. But, there's a lot of movies out there, and I genuinely have a huge fascination with how things come together. And ultimately, I think that no matter how terrible a movie is, no matter if it does recycle something from a previous movie, ultimately, and Jurassic World obviously falls into this category as well, that it's quite simply a miracle that any movie gets made. You have a team of people coming together, doing their best jobs to get something made and released and out of the door. And regardless of how well the movie does critically or financially, it's still an arduous task. And I still think that every movie deserves to be celebrated. And that's what I try and do on my podcast. And yeah, if anyone is interested in finding me or any of my now 100 episodes as of recording, then yeah, you can find me on Twitter. You just verbaldiorama.com, or find me in your podcast app of choice. I am everywhere.
Perfect.
a bit like pterodactyls, they're literally everywhere. You can't get enough. They're just, oh my god, it's just harassing, it's attacking me. That's what Verbal Diorama does to your soul.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming and making some Coppola connections with me.
Thank you so much for having me.
And there we have it. Another vote for yes, them being the greatest film family of all time. I somehow feel like I should change that question slightly to possibly based on the film we are discussing alone. Let me know if you would like me to do that. Again, a massive thank you to Em for coming and chatting about this film with me. If you disagree with anything we've said or you agree with any of it, please don't hesitate to get in touch on all the social medias at Caged In Pod on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Letterboxd. Or if you would like to send an email, you can do that cagedinpod@gmail.com. As for next week on the episode, we'll be taking a departure from the wider Coppola family and looking at the man who started it all in Nicolas Cage with The Croods, A New Age. I'll be joined by Marcy from the Super Network podcast to discuss that film. Also, over the next month or so, I'll be running a bonus podcast series ingeniously titled The Caged In Pigcast, where I'll be talking all things pig from a variety of guests, from David Nell, who acts in one of the key scenes in the film, to one of the film's producers and writers, Vanessa Block, as well as Alexis Grappas and Philip Klein, who did the amazing score for Pig. So make sure that you tune in for that. I'm trying my hardest, guys, to get Nick Cage and Alex Wolff on the podcast, as well as Michael Sarnowski. If you enjoyed this podcast, please do rate, review on Apple Podcasts, Acast, or wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. As always, I've been Petros Patsilivas, your guide through the crazy world of the Coppola family tree. Remember to keep it caged in, and I'll catch you next time.